Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Gritty Hour. We took a month off for outdoor work, which the weather did not cooperate with, but here we are back for the rest of the year with the help of the Almighty. And today I have a very special guest, Eric Salas. Eric, he and I know each other locally. He's a Millbrookian. You and John are officially Millbrookians.
Correct.
Um, but
Years now.
I know you also live in Manhattan. But anyway, welcome to the Gritty Hour, Eric.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
Oh, thanks for being on. We
We've been
appreciate
talking
it.
about this for a while.
Yeah, I know. We got into the discussion because we were both down on 9/11, 2001. We were both down in Lower Manhattan, and you were even closer to the situation than I was. As I say, I know you live up in Millbrook. That's how I met you and John, but you also still live in Manhattan, I believe, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
I was living in Brooklyn for a while and working in Manhattan at that time, but now
Hmm.
since back in Manhattan, actually living in Manhattan and Millbrook. So I'm
Right,
splitting again.
right. Which one do you like better? Don't take sides. Don't take sides.
Uh,
Only kidding.
it's equal, 50-50.
Oh, yeah. But where did you work on 9/11, or who did you work for?
So it was called Martin Progressive. It
Uh-huh.
was an IT company, and it was actually my second day on the job. I
Wow.
went through an interview with the hiring manager, HR woman, um, hit it off. Was in first day. She took me to lunch. I got to see the harbor, where all the boats were, and all that. And then the second day, made my way to work on the subway. Got there, sat at my desk. I was on the 77th floor,
Oh boy. Of
and
which
it was
tower?
Tower One.
Okay. The South
And
Tower.
the South Tower,
Right.
correct. And
Okay.
it was also Monday, it really poured that night.
Hmm.
So Tuesday morning was a little like cloudy, misty, kind of, like that. The wasn't raining, but it still had that feeling of like the weather was off. And so when I got to work, I could see that, it was you couldn't see out the windows too much because there were still clouds from the morning. And my sister was working for Chase Bank. She was in Brooklyn and she could see Manhattan from her office.
Hmm.
I had just sent her an email, said I made it, my second day on the job, all's good, getting ready for work. And right when I hit send, literally, I was sitting, the whole building shook, and I felt, I mean, my everything shook, and I went
Mm.
forward, back, and I was like, well, that was weird. What was that? And so I turned around. Behind me was the windows, and I see papers flying all around, and I was like, okay, so I mean, I didn't think anything of it. I mean, I
Right.
didn't know what to even understand what was happening. I do
Right.
remember like the story of years ago, a small biplane had hit the Trade Center once, and even Rockefeller Center, and like it wasn't this catastrophe that it ended up being.
Right.
So I wasn't really concerned, but then a few moments later, the building started, our floor's office was filling with smoke, and the woman that her name was Anne, she quickly, because her husband was a Vietnam vet and always told her, keep at your desk a roll of paper towels and a gallon of water. So if there's a fire, dump the water and the paper towels and then pass them out to whoever's there so that they won't inhale the smoke.
Mm.
So really, she's the one that we weren't at full staff either. There was probably like 16 people at that time that
What time
got
of
there.
the day was that about?
8:30. So whenever the first tower hit, I guess it was the first plane hit, I should
Yeah, I think it
say.
was 8:40 something when.
It was
Yeah.
like not too long after I had arrived.
Right.
And so she passed everything out. She got us all together. She was calm as can be and total, like, took charge. And of course, at that point, we're like, okay, this is serious. And so we went into the stairwell from our office, we had to go through the corridor, and we could see people waiting to get on the elevators to go down. And we all kind of knew, like, you don't do that in a situation, but I think people panic, and that's their immediate reaction, is to, get the hell out, like, save yourself. And so we hit the stairwell, and there were so many people, it was a slow process going down.
Well, before you get to the stairs, what I had heard that there was the PA system was telling people to not evacuate the building because the North
Tom,
Tower was the North Tower that was hit.
I honestly, there are bits and pieces that I just don't remember. Like,
Right.
I don't know if it's blocked because of that, or I
Hmm.
was so focused on, like, trying to get out that I
Right.
didn't hear
But it wasn't
that.
a full-fledged panic, as you said, right?
No, no. I mean, it was just like, yeah, it didn't, that was much later in the process of
Hmm.
the event. But at the beginning, it was like, okay, you go through fire drills when you work in a big building, and you have those events, and they teach you precautions and what to do and what to look for and all that. So that's what we were doing. So it didn't seem like it was still that serious.
Right.
And so when then we were in the stair, it's all of a sudden everybody to the right, and we see firemen coming up the stairs all the way up from the ground up. I mean, we were probably already in the 60 something floor.
How much
And
time do you think elapsed between the time when you first felt the shake, right after you sent the email, till you were on the 60th floor with firemen coming up?
oh, it was probably 20, 30 minutes.
Wow, they got up there pretty fast, huh?
And I think they were already, like, when it happened, they were probably already in gear on their way up, because
Ah,
the building was on fire
right,
above, like 10 floors above me.
right.
And I don't, I thank God for the New York Fire Department. I don't know how these guys did that. And, it's like there was one in particular that we gave him bottled water. He had full gear, axe, everything, and was climbing in the sweat because it was hot in the stairwell.
Hmm.
And he just was gonna do his job no matter what. And he had a big mustache. He had an Irish name. I don't remember those things, but I still see his face. I can see
You
his
mean there
face.
was an Irish fireman in New York at the time?
Can you believe it?
Yeah,
But it was like that moment you're proud, like, to be in New York, and like people take care of each other, and like when it comes down to these kinds of
in the
events,
crisis moments,
a
yes.
crisis, that people can really lift each other up and calm you down and make you feel better and support you and everything. And so that was going on. And then I did, this older gentleman slipped and fell on his elbows on a stair, and they had to help him down. There was also other, I guess, EMS and people that from the building itself, I guess, like, what would you call them? Like custodians from the building were helping people evacuate.
Right.
And
And it was it like a you would see in a high rise, two flights per floor,
correct.
so it
Yeah.
would go down and then
You would
down and
go
then
down, like, and then the
over.
landing.
Right.
Yeah. And then I did see a burn victim. N- It's still sort of fuzzy in my mind, because I
Hmm.
guess I was, like, not believing all what was happening at that time either. Like, it was very surreal at that point. It
Oh,
was like,
sure. Yeah.
like,
You don't get your head around it right away,
no,
believe me.
it
Yeah.
was just really bizarre. Like,
Hmm.
and my wildest dreams would never have thought that this would happen, or I would have this experience and to live to tell about,
Right.
for one thing. But as of today, I still don't have a sense of time, how long getting down from the 77th floor to the lobby. But the lobby vision is very clear. I remember seeing marble that was, like, in some of the pillars had fallen. Uh,
Well, as you're on the stairs, is it one long continuous staircase from the 77th to the lobby?
yeah, I mean, it would turn and then landing and then go down another flight.
No, I know,
And
but it went from 77 right to the lobby without having to switch staircases.
from what I remember, it was just all the way down. I don't
Okay,
remember like going into another batch or another I mean it could be, but that's like there are things that I just don't
right.
remember. I mean
Sure.
it's just, you know,
Yeah, and and
um,
and I just have to ask, while you're on the stairs, did you feel the second plane? Because that's the plane that hit your building.
no.
Really?
No, because actually our building was got hit first and tower 2 fell. Wait, I'm getting this.
No, no. The North Tower got hit first.
Got hit
The
first.
South Tower, which was your building, had the second plane hit it. But the South Tower, which is your building, was the first tower to come down.
Come down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
there's still things that like I think I just like it's hard to like I said earlier to wrap my head around.
sure,
And
sure. And who could
'cause at
blame you?
that
Yeah.
point we got outside and we were like, do you want to look up? And we're like, oh, we saw the buildings on fire. We're like, oh, we're okay, we made it. And so we turned around to cross the street and just like to walk away from the area, and then that's when the first tower fell.
Which was the
And
tower you just left.
yeah,
Yeah, but you don't
and
remember. You don't remember the plane. You didn't feel anything
no,
from the plane hitting it. That's
no.
interesting. Yeah.
I mean, I guess because there was maybe at that point we were already lower. I honestly couldn't tell you at
Right.
this,
Right.
but it was just that moment when we turned around to leave the area is when we heard the rumbling and collapse, and then the cloud came and everybody started running, and it
Which
became
which uh which way did you go when you first left the building? Did you go uh towards Trinity Church or?
I wanted, of all things, it we were near, I think it was called McSorley's bar.
Uh-huh.
So we ended up in that area.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, and we hadn't even like literally gone a block when the tower fell because the cloud came so fast.
Right.
And we
Do you
were,
do you do you have any recollection of when you first left the lobby, what the scene in front of you was? Or you
yeah,
just
yeah, no, actually, I remember seeing a woman's high heel shoe on the ground in the lobby, a scarf, like a silk scarf, um, a jacket, and we were making our way out, and the police were helping, like guiding everybody where to go to leave the building.
hmm
And when we came outdoors, there was already barricades, but there was people everywhere looking. You know, all the onlookers wanted to see what was going on.
Right.
So we
Right.
had to go through that crowd to cross the street.
Right.
It was, I guess nobody thought or was in disbelief of what the hell was going on.
Right.
Like,
Right.
how could this be happening? You know what I mean? On just a
Yeah.
random kind of day.
How
And
much time do you think it took you to get from 77 down to the lobby? About an hour?
I would say an hour.
hmm
And the thing was, Tom, like we did the stairwell, we got out, we went to that bar, the bartenders gave us wet rags to clean up. Went to the bathroom and I looked like I was from Pompeii because I was covered with all the ash and everything.
Right. Oh, this is after the collapse. Okay.
Yeah, after,
Yeah.
and at that point they gave us water, we sat at the bar, and then that's when my legs turned into like lead. Like to get off the bar stool and to even walk was unbelievable. Like it
hmm
was like, almost like I had lead feet. Like it took me like a turtle trying to walk
Right.
because of, that coming down. I mean, 77 floors in an hour is a
It's a
lot.
hell of a workout. Yeah. And
You
your
know what I
adrenaline
mean? Like,
is
yeah,
is what's getting you down, but
yeah. And then
sometimes
when
it
your
drains
body,
when you.
like, when
Yeah.
you're like, realize you're okay, and then all of a sudden everything was like, wow, this is crazy.
Mm.
And but then they had the news on in the bar, and we knew that unfortunately everything had already fallen on both. And because we
Oh, you
saw
were
the
in there. You were in there when the North Tower fell too. You were in
we were
McSorley's.
actually across the street. It was a woman's dress shop. So we were in the cloud when it fell and we were running and then it was sort of slow motion. It's like everything went pitch black
Sure. Yeah.
and it's like how do you like it's like you just give up because what can you do?
Hmm.
And at that this woman, my boss, grabbed my hand because I don't know, it was just like we were together the whole time. We looked out for each other and as we were slow motion, this little green neon light appeared to the left of us, and the smoke started to clear a little bit. And so we forced ourselves to the and realized it was a dress shop. And we started banging on the door, and they didn't want to let us in because they were frightened. They didn't know what was going on at that point either.
Right.
And finally, they let us in. We collapsed on the floor, and we were able to use their phone because cell phones back then, I mean, I had a flip phone, so that tells you a lot how long
Yeah.
ago. But I
And
mean, the
depending on the service, a lot of the payphones
service, a lot of
weren't
service.
working.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so they let us use their phone. I called my sister at the bank in Brooklyn and she was sort of the operator for my family. Everybody that immediate friends and family were calling her, and she was like, "I have no information. I don't even know where he is." So when I finally got her, she was able to patch me in to my parents who were in Texas and other family, and then I was sort of relieved too because then I knew I was okay. Like hearing their voices, it was like this reassurance that
Right.
okay,
Right.
still here, I made it. And after that it was really like kind of a blur. Like for a week after I was bedridden because my legs were like
Well,
lead.
when you've, I guess after both buildings had collapsed, so
Yeah,
it got filled with smoke and then started to clear a little bit, and then the second building collapsed and it was back to
yeah,
square one with the darkness.
yeah, yeah.
When that cleared, is that when you left the dress shop?
That's when we left and we went because we saw the people running and like you said, it cleared slowly. And we said, we've got to go, we've got to get out of here. We've got to make our way home or whatever. So we came out, and then we saw the bar, and the bartenders were outside trying to help people with bottled water and all these other things to
Hmm.
bring them in. They also think they were serving food at the time. It was breakfasty things or whatever. And and that's when we got to the bar and the news was on, and that's when we actually learned from the news that it was a terrorist attack. It wasn't a little plane or something that hit the building that
Yeah.
that so that also was sort of a reality check or eye-opening about how the world was becoming, I guess. Or I
Hmm.
don't know. I don't even like I still don't understand it. Like
Yeah.
the hate and the animosity for one human being or humanity against human, like it doesn't,
Yeah, it's
you
hard to
know.
get your head around it. But so when you left the dress shop, though, that was after the
Mhm.
second building smoke, the collapse
Yeah,
of the second
yeah.
building
After
smoke
the
got cleared.
collapse.
So
Yeah,
you were
right,
in
right.
there for the duration because there was time between
Yeah,
the two
yeah,
buildings collapse.
yeah.
So you
No,
were either in the bar or in the dress shop during that
right.
whole.
Yeah,
So when
yeah.
that second smoke cleared and you decided to get out of the dress shop, where did you go?
That's when we went to the bar. The bar
Oh,
was
the
the
bar
second.
was the second
Yeah.
destination. Okay.
And also because at that point when the smoke cleared, the sun was shining and we thought it was sort of like, oh, there's light out of the darkness and
Hmm.
there's hope again right now and all that. And then yeah, so going to the bar, we were probably only there like 30 minutes, if that. We cleaned up, they gave us water, they had payphones, we had to wait in line to use the payphones, so we both called our families again. She was from Long Island, and I called my sister in Brooklyn, and just to say where we were okay. We were together, helping each other, and we were going to make our way to my friend's apartment on 22nd Street.
Okay.
And so we both said, "Do you want to do this? Do you need more?" I and she was a little older than I was at the time, and I just didn't want her to like just I think she lost her shoes, if I'm not mistaken, or they got ruined at some point.
Right.
And
So you started walking north with the crowd.
we started what we went down under the Brooklyn Bridge and around through Chinatown and walked all the way up to 22nd Street
Okay.
from all that.
And
And
did you
it was
stay over there?
yeah, so we got to my friend's apartment and we were probably there 3 or 4 hours. And my friend gave my coworker a pair of shoes, like sneakers or whatever that she could wear. And then my brother, his now wife, was a teacher near the trade center, and she was evacuating all her fifth grade students, and they were seeing people jumping from the trade center.
Right, right, right.
And so she had her
You didn't see
experience.
any of that, right?
I didn't see any of that,
Right.
but she also had to make sure all the kids got home. So my brother didn't have contact with her for a while because of
Oh,
the cell phone thing. No, there was no connection. So ultimately, we all met up at our friend's house and we were there until probably 6 o'clock
okay.
that evening. So we were there for a while. She got us food and calling our families again that we were okay. And again, very surreal. Like it didn't make sense. Like nothing was like what the hell just I go through. Like
Yeah, yeah.
it was a life-changing experience.
And when you
Um
when you finally got home to Brooklyn, to your home,
yeah.
did you put the news on?
Well, so getting we took the subway from Manhattan to back to Brooklyn, and I
How
was at
did
that
how did at that hour it was running?
yeah, by 6:30, it was 6:30 the trains were running again.
South of City Hall?
Yeah. Yeah.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
There, yeah. Because I remember getting on the F train
Okay.
and so it was me and my brother and his now wife. The three of us were together going back to Brooklyn, and my sister had gone home because we said, "Don't come, you can't come to the city. No, there was no way she could get there."
Hmm.
And so we came, the three of us came home on the subway, and the subway, as long as I've been in New York for 20 something years, I've never, you could hear a pin drop on the subway. Everybody was like zombie-like, just zoned out,
Well, they were all
disbelief.
coming from roughly the same
The
area.
same, yeah,
Yeah.
whether their experience obviously was probably not exactly like mine, but I mean, everybody was feeling that like the world had ended or something.
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah.
and also I want to say it felt like the longest subway ride home. I guess
Mm.
because of the quiet, like you were in a zone. You're almost like hypnotized, I guess. And it
Yeah.
just seemed like to go forever. And then again, walking out the subway steps was a thing, and that was
Hmm.
hard. And then we lived in a brownstone apartment and climbing those stairs, like it was hard to like it was like constantly reliving the stair thing for me. That was my big thing for a long time.
Right.
I,
Well,
you know,
just to double back, when you left the apartment in 22nd Street, finally around six
mhm,
to 6:30, how were
yeah.
the legs feeling?
They were pretty stiff. I mean, they were okay, but they were like the only way I could say like you ran a marathon or you ran, like well not in my case, but if you ran a couple of miles and you hadn't run in a long time in a few years and you feel your muscles really tight in your legs and
Hmm.
there's that kind of feeling of
Right.
stiffness. So it was sort of like that kind of feeling.
Did you get a seat on the F train?
No. It was it was so crowded too. Everybody was standing and just
Yeah.
it could have
Yeah.
been like a still shot, like a photograph. No, but nobody was moving, talking.
Hmm.
It was really, and actually, Tom, I hadn't thought about that until this conversation. about
Yeah.
that. I can still see the orangey yellow subway chair, like that whole look from
Yep.
the F,
Yep.
um, like golden with the orange and like, so there are things that pop up that are really vivid in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of them. And then when we got to our apartment in Brooklyn, I had left my windows open in my room. I had the back bedroom, and my bed was covered in a really fine layer of dust.
What
I
part
mean,
of Brooklyn?
we were in Carroll Gardens.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
so you would have gotten some of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So everything there in the apartment, that if the windows were, my window was open, so most of my room was covered in the little, I had a small TV and the windowsill. There was this fine layer of dust, which, was probably all toxic
You
dust
can
at this point. You
you,
know what
you
I
can
mean?
count on it. Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah. And then my sister had a cat, and so that first week, I was really in bed the whole time because I was traumatized from what I went through.
Mm-hmm.
But my sister's cat stayed with me, was like right by my side, wouldn't leave me. If I got up to go get something to eat or go to the bathroom, he would go with me. Would not.
Wow.
It was an amazing, like, his
Yeah.
name was Skipper, and he just knew, like, he was protecting me, and that was like a really cool feeling to be,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Did
I
you
mean, he
did you
did.
did you watch any of the news during that time after like few days after the
Um,
9/11?
you know, I don't think immediately. I think a
Mm-hmm.
few days later I did,
Okay.
because I really think I was avoiding, and I also started because growing up, my father was an architect, and I always used to like to draw, and I'd have art sketchbooks and things, and I had one with me, and that sort of kept me from watching the news. And I would just put music on and I would sketch, and I started sketching and writing down my experiences, and just so, um not to forget, in a way. I mean, I have a book that I wrote a bunch of stuff in. I just locked it away. I'm not, you know,
Yeah.
there's more vivid detail because I was writing it the day or
At the
two after.
moment, yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was still fresh because I knew there would be things
Mm-hmm.
that I would forget.
One day
And
you might get back to it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And but the drawing thing really was helpful. And and then after like the seventh day, I was like, I can't live like this. I mean, I have to go back to work, and like, I have to survive.
Yeah.
So I found a therapist, and I started with therapy, and it was really interesting because I had ended up finding out that I had a lot of parallels with my dad. And my dad was, a World War II vet, and he was on the 77th division, in the 77th division of the Liberty, um, forgot what the word was, but his patch was the Statue of Liberty.
Oh.
It was like, for me, I was in New York on the 77th floor. Like, there were all these things that were sort of parallel.
Mm-hmm.
I remember him telling me that, he was in the Philippines fighting, and he saw one of his, buddies' head get chopped off, and he never talked about his experience. But at that moment, I think he realized what I was going through was not the same, but he understood my
Traumatic enough to be a
anxiety, and
parallel,
yeah,
yeah.
to
Mm-hmm.
get that. And he said, if I had the chance to go back and pay my respects to all the guys that didn't make it, I would do it. And he goes, because I couldn't go back to Manhattan. I couldn't ride the subway. The rumble of the subway would freak me out. Big trucks on the street, I would jump when they, like a garbage truck hit a pothole, like that kind of, that's how bad it
Mm-hmm.
was for me. Like, I couldn't ride the subway alone. There were times I actually left the subway because I couldn't, if I was by myself, I just could not get on a
Yeah.
subway.
I think I told you my anxiety experience with the subways after
Yeah.
9/11. Yeah.
Yeah. And I, to this day, I still have a little bit of like, I don't ride them all the time when I'm there because I'm more I'd rather walk or take a bus because it's above ground. And I don't know, it's because I've gotten older. Like it's not that my priority to hurry up and get somewhere. I'll get
Right.
there when I can get there, kind of
Right.
thing.
Right.
So, but my father, getting back to him, was the one that said, you need to go back down to the World Trade Center site and pay your respects for the people that didn't make it. And and I was dealing with a lot of survivor guilt because it's like I would see families with the t-shirts looking for their family, like if
Right.
anybody
The
knew.
missing signs. It's still.
Right.
I,
And
I'll never forget those
and that
signs.
would trigger me too. So I was always feeling guilty that, well, why am I still here?
Right.
That kind of thing. And my father was the one that told me, we don't know why, but you're still here. And then he's like, you have a second birthday. You need to celebrate that you're still here and do what you can to move on with your life. And so that's when immediately 2 weeks in, after, well, a week of being in bed, but then I started looking for a therapist. I found a woman in Brooklyn, and she really helped me to like wrap my head around things and to, there are things we will probably never understand in this world, but
Mm-hmm.
she made it possible for me to move forward and not let it overtake all my senses and like stop me from living my life. Like
Right.
I had to continue
Right.
because
Right.
you can't live,
So have you been down to the site?
so
Pre and post new building? Because
post,
it took them like
yeah,
10 years to build that bloody thing.
right. So the first time I went, I had some cousins visiting. He was ex-military cousin, and his daughter was going up to West Point at the time. And they came to visit, and we found ourselves on the subway going to the Trade Center. But I
Right.
didn't like it didn't make like I didn't think anything of it till we got out, and literally I it was my legs felt like the lead again. I could not get my off the curb. I was like implanted in the concrete.
How long after the 9/11 was that?
So that was like a few months later.
A few months. Okay.
Yeah, it was a few months later,
Hmm.
probably at least 3 months later when my cousin came because he wanted to see me, make sure I was okay and all that. And then I sort of had a panic attack and broke down, and my cousin couldn't stop apologizing. And I said, no, it's part of healing. You have to face these things. I could not. Then why was I living in New York if I can't face these my circumstances of what I've been through?
Right.
And it was difficult, but I did it. And then they built the new tower. And this time my little sister and her husband and my nephew came to visit, and they wanted to go down there. And I said, yes, let's go. And I was able to go. And this time it was more empowering and knowing that I'm still here.
Hmm.
And and I learned over all the years that I'm a lot stronger than I thought I was,
Hmm.
even maybe mentally. I mean, nobody's perfect, but there are times when I think I can keep it together and handle a situation or a crisis situation and
Right.
be the one that's going to take charge or, you know, not not let it affect me in a bad way or
Right.
that
Do
kind.
you still have anxiety today?
I
Or
do,
no, okay. Well, I
but
should
not,
have asked you, did you have anxiety before 9/11? Would be the first question.
I, you know, I may have, but I was to the point where like I felt I'm moving to New York City. I can do this. Like this is amazing. So at that time, I sort of felt invincible, like you know. And then when that happened is when things started to change for me. I guess emotionally, mentally, physically, all
Right.
that's it's like, oh, and so it that was the whole thing, like riding a subway, hearing the noises on the street, getting on a plane again to go visit family was really difficult because all I would think about is this plane going to crash? Am I going to
Ah,
hit a building?
yeah.
And that was years before I stopped feeling that.
Right.
Oh, my doctor prescribed a really low dosage of a pill to help, and that's what I did. And I'm grateful because I weaned myself off of that. And that was another thing. Is like I felt I was strong enough to start handling these things without being medicated. And um, but there are times to this day, though, I will have sort of a mild panic attack, so to speak,
Hmm.
that I need to I stop, do my breathing exercises and say, I'm okay, you got this, you just keep going, don't quit. And that's really what gets me through it. So
Right.
um, I mean, I'm not perfect either. There are times when it's like,
Are there certain things that trigger that, or it just comes out of the blue?
um, no, things I tend to trigger it more. Yeah. I it's never just random anymore. It has to be there. Sometimes I'll like even here in Millbrook, if something's burning and there's like this burning smell, like the way the burning rubber smelt in the city for a while after, like that's triggering. If I smell like something burning, that triggers me. Um,
Hmm.
Loud rumbling noises still kind of put me on edge.
Yeah.
Sometimes even thunder, if it's really like loud, like the real rumbly thing that
Uh huh.
I've had an experience where it's like, whoa, like, you know.
Yeah. But as you and I discussed when I saw you in person recently,
Mhm.
talking about it is cathartic. It does help.
Yeah, yeah.
I
I mean,
felt that too. You know.
I mean, I've talked about it since I started therapy, and people would say, "Are you okay? Can you?" And I even remember one time getting on a plane, and the woman next to me hated flying. She was so freaked out. She had to go. She was traveling for work. And I told her my experience and what I was going through, and I calmed her down. And I don't know, I think like I was saying earlier, I think this experience taught me compassion in a sense. I mean, I'm very empathetic anyway, but it made me realize when somebody's in that state, it's really freaking scary that, you think your world's gonna end
Right.
and you're all alone. So I was able to calm her down, and she was so grateful. And I told her my experience, and I said, and I was like, you got this, you can do this. The captains know what they're doing. They're trained to fly these planes. And it, in a way, was also helping me because I was worried about it was the beginning when I was worried about flying on a plane again.
Sure.
It actually calmed me down as well because I was really nervous to be on the plane. And then it somehow worked in my favor too. So
Helping her helped you.
yeah, totally,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's a good lesson to learn, actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 Um,
So, what became of the girl you were with that morning? The was that the
so
lady that hired you?
yeah, she was my boss. Technically, she was the boss, and we would send note let people didn't email back too much back then. We would actually send cards to each other on holidays and all that.
Right.
And then I lost touch with her, and then I I years later, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, I Googled her name to see anything, and it said that it's not clear. I don't know if she passed away or not, but that she was dealing with cancer. So I don't know. And I just I didn't, that part of it, I just kind of I have to let it go.
Right.
You know, and the
Which is
thing was,
understandable. Yeah.
she also, when I met her, and she was a Jewish woman and said she believed in angels. And she said, I know in my faith I'm not supposed to believe in angels. That's more of a Catholic thing. She says, but I believe in them. And so in a way, for me, she was sort of the angel that helped me get through on that day.
Right.
And
Right.
and then not hearing from her after kind of well, maybe she really was. You know what I mean? Like maybe that part of it was true that
Hmm.
there was a reason why we were. together that day.
Oh yeah,
So
I believe in those circumstances are on purpose.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But less important question: what happened to the company and your
Um,
2-day career in it?
I was very fortunate. They moved to another office, I think sort of like 20th, 14th or 20th Street.
Hmm.
And I went back and because they were telling everybody to report back to work. And I mean, and of course, nobody was working for a few weeks. Everything was shut down, as you know, in the city. And so when they called me back, it was to lay me off.
Oh,
And because they decided to move out of New York at that point. And I believe they were going to Florida, if I'm not mistaken. So they were
okay.
downsizing the company and all that. But I was very grateful because they gave me sort of a like a severance, a small one, but it was enough to, to survive on for a little bit.
Nick,
And
for
so
2 days, what do you want for 2 days
I know,
work?
right?
Not even
So,
two, right? Yeah,
yeah, not even two. It was a
yeah,
day and a half.
a
So it
day
was
and 20 minutes. Yeah,
20 minutes. So I
yeah,
was grateful, and that in other words, I just feel like there are great people in this world, and
yeah,
that's no, we don't know what everybody goes through, but ultimately, I think everybody's got a good heart, and
yeah.
you know,
And you worked
so
right across the street from me. How the hell did we not run into
I
each other?
I don't know. You would
People
have
that
thought it
aren't
was
from New York
at the
would think,
bar.
yeah, well, they should have seen each other. There's only 300,000 people down there. Don't worry
I
about it.
know, I know,
Yeah.
I know, I
But
know.
I did see, and you would agree, I think the best of people then too. It's ironic, but that particular
Yeah,
morning, I saw the
yeah.
very best
Oh yeah,
that people
yeah,
can do.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I
No,
can
it
hang
was
my hat on that notion too.
yeah. I mean and that's why I have a great respect for the NYPD and the fire department because they really took care of all of us at that time. I mean, they were there.
Yeah,
They they put themselves on the line.
and the EMS folks,
And
and
the EMS
yeah,
people, I mean,
but just
everybody.
the just regular folks.
Yeah, yeah,
Because I remember having to walk to Grand Central, because I lived in the Bronx at the time,
yeah.
and I can't tell you how many people just handed me bottles of water going up the
Yeah, oh, that's true.
walking
Yeah,
uptown. Just people
yeah.
wanted to give you
They, they
things.
they had like barrels full of ice, and I remember they had water to
These are
keep them
just
cool.
regular people that lived
Yeah,
where they were living, and they came out and helped the people that were going uptown.
yeah,
Never saw
yeah.
anything like it. Yeah.
No, no. And
Yeah.
hopefully I mean, there won't be another situation like
No,
that.
no.
It's
But
our lifetime
I did,
anyway.
like, as I said, I did see the best of people that day. So, and I
Yeah,
know you have too. So,
yeah. Oh,
yeah.
and just another, now that I think about it, the earthquake that we had
Uh
last
huh.
month, whenever that was, I was in my apartment and everything shook again. So that also was a bit of a trigger. Was like it's the fight or flight response kicks in. Like, do I leave the apartment? Like, what do I do? And
Oh, you
then,
were in Manhattan that time?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it was like, oh, geez, not, like, it was almost like, geez, not again. Do I have to
Yeah.
go through this all over again? But then it's like I calm down and put the news on and realize what happened. And it's like, all
Hmm.
right, I'm okay. The building's standing. I'm,
It's like the
kind of,
blackout theory. You think it's just the building you're in, and then you realize it could be you know, it's like a concentric circles that go around, and you realize it happened to everybody.
everybody. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then seeing people like in Long Island and
Yeah.
further upstate and all that, like, everybody was feeling this and
Yeah.
freaking out at the same time. So,
And the other thing that stuck in my head as you were telling your story, and I do appreciate you coming on, Eric. That was a
no, thanks for
great
having
story.
me.
I hope it helped you as well as it helped our listeners and
Yeah.
viewers.
Yeah.
Um, is the closer you are to an event, the less you know what's going on.
Yeah.
I'm sure there were people in Des Moines that knew what was going on before I did.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, if you think about it, we were in ground zero, right? I mean,
Right.
that who would ever like you don't hear that.
But like you said, you were going down the stairs thinking a
Yeah.
biplane had struck something, or
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
didn't capture
But
the full breadth of
right.
it until you got out of the building.
Not realizing how catastrophic it was going to become.
Oh, sure. And probably
Well,
by that time you didn't know anything about the Pentagon or
no, no.
Shanksville, Pennsylvania plane, and
Right,
all
right. No,
sorts of,
that was like days, even weeks later. That's,
sure.
I
Yeah.
started to watch the news again and to understand what was
Yeah.
going on.
The closer you are to it, the less you know what's going on, you know.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but I do appreciate you coming on, Eric. It was a great story,
I'm glad we
and
finally got to connect on that, and
I'm
you know,
I'm glad you're. I know talking about it as we discussed helps, and I'm glad you're at the point of your life where you can deal with it
yeah,
and and benefit from it. If ironic as that might be to say, you
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
So
No, it was a turning point in my life,
yeah,
and
sure, it's a turning
decided to
point.
make my make the most of what time I have left,
Sure,
so to speak, you know.
yeah, and that attitude, that outlook is the only one that works, you know. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, sir. So we'll see you around town. Say hello to John,
Okay, Will, thanks
and
for having
I
me, and
thank you again for coming on the show and sharing your story.
thank you. And I like the picture that you chose for
Yes,
Manhattan, the
yes,
tower.
yes.
It's a
Memories.
good
Yes,
memory too. Yeah,
yeah. From the Brooklyn side, no less.
from the Brooklyn
So I
side.
got you. I got you covered on both boroughs.
Oh my God, you too.
All right, Eric. Have a great evening,
All
sir.
right, Tom.
Okay, welcome to another episode of the Gritty Hour. Appreciate everybody who tunes in and listens or watches every week. Today, for the first time, I'm doing a solo recording, essentially because I'd like to share my experiences on the 9/11, which I happen to be working down on Wall Street on 9/11, which is about maybe 250 yards away from the World Trade Center at the time. And the anniversary, the 20th anniversary is coming up soon. So I figured I'd do a podcast where I share my experiences. Hopefully it's somewhat cathartic. And I guess I'll just start. The morning of 9/11, 2020, 2001 was like any other morning. I got up, took a shower, put my suit on, got on a train. I lived in the Bronx at the time. And as I said, I worked down on Wall Street. So going down on the train like any other morning. It was a beautiful day, as I recall. And I remember when I got down to the train left the Brooklyn Bridge station. The next stop was Fulton Street. And we stopped outside of Fulton Street. And I remember the conductor saying, we are paused here outside of Fulton for a possible bomb threat at the World Trade Center. I think he did say that. So I remember we were stopped outside of Fulton for a while. So obviously your attention gets honed in on the moment when somebody says something like that. And then, so finally we pulled into the Fulton station and, you know, people got out. I remember some kid at the last minute running onto the train as the doors were closing, like he was glad to be getting the hell out of there. So that didn't dawn on me at the time until after the fact. But anyway, then we pulled into the Wall Street station. By this time, it was about 2 minutes to 9. And so I get off the train. That's my stop, which is right at Trinity Church. If anybody's aware of Manhattan, it's Trinity Church is right at the foot of Broadway and Wall Street. So the train station stopped. The train stopped. I got out. And I remember there was this huge line of people on the stairs going up the stairs, and it was stopped. And I'm like, what the hell? Yeah, 2 minutes to 9. It's a minute to 9. I got to be at work at 9. What's the problem here? So finally, people ended up going to the top of the stairs. And when I got to the top of the stairs, I realized why everyone was stopped on the staircase. Because I looked up, the first thing you see, well, first of all, it was raining ash. I remember that. And I looked up at the World Trade Center, and I just saw this huge ball of flame coming out of the upper level of the North Tower. And I remember standing, because there was no traffic. It was just a bunch of people standing around. And I remember standing in the middle of the street, looking up at that and thinking, how in the hell are they going to fight that fire? And I remember, and this is another retrospect moment, I remember seeing things falling off the tower as I was looking at it. And just thought it was debris. So then I walked down to my office. I was at 14 Wall Street, which was directly across the street from the entrance to the stock exchange, the New York Stock Exchange, 14 Wall. And I get into the elevator, and there was two fellas were in the elevator with me, and I'm saying to them, I don't know how the hell they're going to fight that fire. I said, I have a feeling we're not going to be doing any work today. And he said, yeah, we just came from there. There's actually people jumping out of the building. And then it dawned on me it was not going to be a normal day, because that debris apparently was people. So anyway, I got into my office, and there was a few people there. Went to the trading room, which had a TV there, and they were looking at the tower, which was across the street, but we were looking at it on the television. And I remember the people on the news were saying they believed a small biplane or a small plane had flown into the tower. And even then, I'm thinking the size of that ball of fire I was looking at, there was no way that could be a single plane, a small little plane. And then I was, talking to a few people. I remember one girl coming up and asking me for a cigarette, so I guess we could smoke in the office. And so we had a cigarette in the kitchen, and I went back to the trading room just in time to see the second plane going into the South Tower live. And I heard it. It's weird. You're watching it on TV in the trading room on the 17th floor of a building that's about 250 yards away, maybe. But I could hear it live. I could hear the boom, like a sonic boom. Actually felt our building rattle a little bit. And then, you see it on TV. So I actually experienced it on TV and in real life all at the same time. By that time, the thing that sticks out in my head was how much misinformation got thrown around. There was people saying the Pentagon was hit, the White House was hit, all sorts of these buildings in Washington were being hit. And the stupid thought crossed my head that it was a coup, that the country is being taken over by somebody. I know that sounds ridiculous and 20 years later, but at the time, that's what I was thinking. So then, we walking around, we're just talking to each other. A couple more people came in. I remember one girl came in who had taken the PATH train. She lived in New Jersey, and she took the PATH train in to work, and her hair was singed from debris that was coming off the building as she was coming out of the PATH train. And she said she ran to the office from the train station, about maybe a block and a half away. And I remember her hair was singed from stuff that was coming out of the building. And so we're all milling around, and all of a sudden, it felt like an earthquake. The whole building started to shake. And this is, I guess, one of the south tower collapsed. Um, I remember the building shaking. I went over towards the trading room and I looked out the window and I saw the window just getting completely black with debris. The window was rattling and shaking hard, and the building itself, I remember, moved. And all of a sudden I couldn't see out the window. It was completely black outside. And then the alarm in the building went off, and everyone started to evacuate the 17th floor, I guess all the floors. And I remember we went out into the hallway, and some people were going to take the elevator for something. I remember something in my head saying, during a fire, and you don't know what the hell's going on, during a fire, you should never take an elevator. So I remember directing people down the stairs. And I was with this other fella who also lived in the Bronx. He was about 63 years old at the time. I was 38 at the time. He was had a hard time walking under normal circumstances. Well, anyway, I checked around to make sure. He said he had to go to the bathroom. I remember that. So I remember waiting for him. Everybody else had left down the stairs. A couple of officers on that floor, they all evacuated down the staircase. And I suppose some people took the elevator. But so he finally got out of the bathroom. I actually looked in the bathroom to make sure it was empty. And then he and I left. And for those who have never been in a high rise, so the 17th floor has two flights, I guess you could call it, upstairs per floor. So 17 floors, you're going down 30, what is that, 34 different flights of stairs. And I remember making the, and there was people passing us because, you know, my friend was going down slowly. And there's people passing us and everybody had that worried look on their face, you know. And I remember my friend asking me, I remember him commenting that he doesn't want to die in the staircase. And I remember saying to him, you're going to die someday, but it won't be today. So you just keep moving. So we finally get to the lobby. And when we got into the lobby, everybody that works in this building, it's like a 40-story building, was in the lobby. I'm talking, you couldn't even barely move in the lobby. And we're just standing in the lobby. And I remember one fella came in from the outside. I think he ran into the building for a respite, and he was completely gray from head to toe. And somebody was giving him a bottle of water, and he was pouring it over his head. And so we basically waited out in the lobby. I could see out the door where I could normally see the entrance to the New York Stock Exchange. I couldn't see out at all. It was like nighttime out there. And this was whatever, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. So it was probably around 10 and change in the morning. So, you know, we're just milling around in the lobby, very crowded lobby. I remember whoever ran that building at the time wanted to move people into in the lobby. We had a gym. There was a public gym there, and it had its own, I don't know, central air conditioner or central air system, because it started to get a little in the lobby. It started to get a little hard to breathe. So we all went into this gym. I don't know how the hell everybody fit in there, but, and again, so we're away from the radio, away from the TV. This is before cell phones were all that prevalent. So basically, literally and figuratively in the dark as to what the hell was going on. And but then there was a TV in the gym, and somebody turned, had the TV on, so we were watching the news in the gym, and then we found out about the two planes. There was two 757s, which are as big as they get in terms of planes, and the South Tower had collapsed. So that's what all that ruckus was in the office, the building shaking, everything else. So we stayed in the gym for quite some time, and it was actually in the lobby also. There were a row of payphones. I remember calling my mother, who's now deceased, just to tell her I was still alive, and that well, actually, I should backtrack. We were asked not to leave the building, and no one was able to enter the building after a certain time. So they basically shut the building down. And so I called my mother, told her I was okay, just wait and get the hell out of there somehow. And she had mentioned my sister, Susan, who also worked down in the Wall Street area. She worked at 30 West Broadway, which her office window looked out on the Trade Center. So it was basically her building, a parking lot, and then the South Tower. So fortunately, she didn't go into her office, but she did try to get into my building to hook up with me. But they weren't letting people in. They weren't letting people out. She has a story that I won't tell, but it's much more dramatic than the story I'm going to tell you. So we went, like I say, we were milling around the lobby, and then all of a sudden it started to clear a little bit. And I remember talking to this other fella from the trading room. His name was Dick, and he's passed away too, unfortunately. I remember telling him, let's go down to the Colony Rose, which about a block and a half away was a bar. And I'm thinking, if we're going to stand around and twiddle our thumbs, we might as well have a libation while we're doing it. Because it started to clear up outside, It was, I looked out the lobby door, and I could actually see the entrance to the stock exchange again. In fact, I saw one of the guards at the stock exchange standing outside with a 45 in his hand. And I remember thinking, what the hell's he gonna do? Shoot a plane down with a 45? But whatever. So we said, he said, let's go. We'll go to Colony Rose. We'll have a couple of beers and see what the hell happens. You're being ignorant at the time. You don't know what the hell's going on. So we left the building, and just as we walked out the building onto Wall Street, the second building, the North Tower, started to come down. And then everybody, he and I, and there were dozens of people behind us that decided to leave at the same time, all ran back into our building. And I remember when we got into the building, looking behind me, and there was this huge whoosh of debris coming down the street. And I couldn't see the stock exchange anymore again. And I couldn't see out it looked like nighttime again. So the other building collapsed, I guess, and we were all still stuck in 14 Wall Street lobby / gym / whatever. So by this time we were back in the gym, and we could see on the TV what was happening. And we were there for quite some time. And by this time they were reporting about extensively about the plane that hit the Pentagon and the plane that crashed in Pennsylvania. And at the time, they were saying there was another plane out there, but I think it was an unidentified plane that they subsequently identified, maybe. And I also remember them saying that they found 4 or 5 guys never showed up at Newark Airport for a plane that was supposed to go to Pennsylvania, excuse me, Los Angeles, and they never boarded the plane, and the plane was grounded, and those guys disappeared, and they found their luggage. I never hear anybody talking about that anymore, because apparently they found a bunch of, the Koran and other type things, and those guys never heard from. I never heard that story anymore after that. I don't know what the hell happened to that plane, but anyway. So finally, the debris from the second plane, excuse me, the second building collapse started to clear. I could look out again. By this time, I was with the said gentleman that I went down the stairs with, because, as we were hanging out in the lobby or the gym, everybody was talking about how they're going to get home, and people were saying there were ferries going over to Jersey and the ferries going over wherever, and there were ferries going to Brooklyn. So this other friend and this girl that I work with, her name is Camille, and this fella's name is Larry. The three of us left the building and went east in hopes of finding a ferry going somewhere. We didn't know where the hell we were going at the time. But the two things that stick out in my head about that is how silent it was. And this is a few hours after or maybe at least an hour and change after the second building collapsed. It was perfectly still the way it felt like it feels right after a blizzard when snowing first stops, and it's deathly silence. The acoustics of the whole Wall Street area was, you could hear a pin drop. And I remember walking through ash that went up just below our kneecaps, just ash. So it was like a blizzard of ash. And I remember at the corner of Nassau Street and Wall Street, or Nassau and Broad and Wall, there was an SUV with the door flung open and the engine running, completely filled with ash and dirt and dust, debris. So whoever was driving that said, "Screw it," jumped out of the car and ran, made a run for it somewhere. And so then the three of us, Camille, Larry, and I, walked down. I should preface, the building management had given out all of their face masks, which were similar, not too dissimilar from this one. And then they ran out of them and started giving out, which I thought was kind of funny even at the time, coffee filters to put over your face. So I had a coffee filter. So I remember we walking down, and of course people are starting to come out of their buildings and mill around, trying to figure out what to do, each and all of us. And so Larry and Camille and I walked towards where the hell were we? Just south of the South Street Seaport. And I think Camille got in touch with her brother or somebody that was going to meet her on the other side of the Brooklyn Bridge. So she went home, or she left to walk over the Brooklyn Bridge. And then I guess her brother was going to try and meet her on the flip side of that bridge on the Brooklyn side. And Larry and I were sitting on a bench right near the East River there. And I remember some guy, I guess he had a boat. And he comes up to the two of us. He goes, "Where are you guys headed?" I said, we're going to the Bronx." He goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to Brooklyn." He goes, "Good luck." So I knew this was not going to be an easy journey. But so Larry, 63-year-old Larry, with his bad leg, and myself just started walking up Manhattan. And well, one thing that sticks in my head, it was as we got close to the city hall, there was a ton of people. Everybody was walking north. And I remember an F-14, I guess, or an F-16 was coming overhead. And I remember a bunch of ladies that were ahead of us on the sidewalk started screaming. I mean, screaming. They thought it was another jet plane. And I remember saying probably the most ridiculous thing I've ever said, which I said to them, relax, it's one of ours, which was a pretty stupid thing to say. But anyway, so that was an F. I remember that guy, and he was doing like flips and stuff as he went up Manhattan. But it felt reassuring to have him there anyway. And the other thing that sticks in my head going up, we walked up Broadway, essentially, is just about every block, someone, I guess, that lived around there were offering us sandwiches or water or soda or whatever. And, you know, that act of kindness stuck out in my head. And as we went further north, the only thing I remember is Starbucks. We passed quite a few of them on the way up Broadway. And every Starbucks we passed was closed, and they were already had signs saying blood donations. They're going to ask for blood donations at all the Starbucks, which I thought was pretty cool too. Because people forget that of all the few thousand people that were killed that day, there were quite a few thousand that were injured that day, which is another, I'm not sure, 8,000. I heard 8,000 injured that day. So anyway, we ended up walking. We stopped in some coffee shop in the village, around the village, somewhere around there, I think, or Soho maybe. And they had a TV on in there. Everybody was just sitting around and having lunch like it was a normal day, which struck me kind of funny. And the TV was on, and I remember somebody mentioning that the mention on the TV that the president was safe and he was on Air Force One and he was flying out wherever the hell he was going. Anyway, it must have been on the east side we walked up, not Soho, because I remember walking through Little Italy also. So we definitely deviated from Broadway. So walking through Little Italy also. But anyway, after quite some time, we finally made it to Grand Central. And by the grace of God, the MTA was running shuttle trains no further south than Grand Central. So Larry, who lived on the west side of the Bronx, and myself, who lived on the east side of the Bronx, went our separate ways from then on. And I went, I was in Grand Central, and I got on a very crowded train and wasn't aware of my own appearance. But I must not have looked too good, because I remember two young teenagers got up and asked if I wanted to sit down. So they must have known by my appearance. I'll jump ahead and say, by the time I got home, I realized my hair, which was brown at the time, was gray, and my suit was gray, which was blue at the time, and my shoes were gray, which was black at the time. So they I guess, got a look at me and asked if I wanted to sit down, which I said no. But so the train finally moseyed up to the Bronx, and I remember getting off at my station, which was the last stop. I remember when the train came out of the tunnel. There's a tunnel that goes, when it goes from Manhattan to the Bronx, goes through the 3rd Avenue tunnel. And remember becomes an elevated train. I remember looking out and just seeing the smoke from the trade centers, stretching about as far as your eye can see, the smoke trails from both of them, which by then were piles. So I get off at Pelham Bay, and I remember going down the stairs, and across the street from the train station was a diner. And I remember the waitress was an Irish girl. She knew me because I went to that diner often. And I remember the look on her face when she saw me coming down them stairs. I must have looked like I just played an 80-year-old man on TV or something. So anyway, I get home and found out subsequently that my sister, who lived upstate in Carmel, New York at the time, got home about 3 hours before I did. I don't know how the hell she got home, but so fast. But I didn't get home till about 5:45, 5:30, 5:45 at night. This is after leaving Wall Street. I think we left it around 1:30, 1:45. So, but anyway, so, and then I got home and the phone was ringing, and it was my godson, Christopher, and his then girlfriend calling me. And I have to admit, I kind of broke down. I guess the adrenaline was leaving my body. And I remember actually before they called, I got home and I turned the shower on. It's just the first thing I wanted to do was take a shower. So as the shower water was running, I was going to take my suit off, and the phone rang, and it was Christopher and his girlfriend asking me how I was, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He tried calling my office, but the phones didn't work. In fact, the phones didn't work for about 4 months after that, but because the relay stations, I believe, were in the basement of the trade center. So I was on the phone with them for about half an hour, and I called my mother, and my sister spoke to them. And then my aunt, who's since passed away, my Aunt Rita, who lived in Las Vegas, called me. I didn't get in the friggin' shower till like 7:15. But anyway, so like everybody else in America, I guess I got out of the shower and just sat in the chair and watched the television till at least 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And I remember hanging that suit up as is, and I was going to save it, but as a posterity, because it was full of debris from the two towers. But a few weeks later, I ended up giving it to the cleaners. They cleaned it, but I should have kept it. So that was my 9/11 day story. And then the next day or so, that was a Tuesday, and the stock exchange had announced they were going to be closed until the following Monday, I believe. So the powers that be in my company, Wellington and Company at the time it was called, I think they've merged. The powers that be were calling me, and I had volunteered to meet this other fellow who was our computer person, to go down there and test the systems on Friday to see if we could open up on Monday with no problems, which we attempted to do. So I met him. His name was Colin. I met that fella. He was Guyanese. He was half Guyanese, half Irish, but he looked Guyanese. His name was Colin O'Reilly. If you happen to trip over this podcast, Colin, hope all is well. Haven't talked to you in about 18 years. But I met him at Grand Central. We went down, and by that time, by Friday, it was going down as far as the Brooklyn Bridge. They weren't going any further south than Brooklyn Bridge. So we got off at the Brooklyn Bridge, and then we had to walk north to Foley Square. We had to walk north. They weren't letting you walk directly south from the train down Broadway. Broadway was closed. So we walked north to Foley Square and tried to come down Water Street, which we ended up doing. We went to a police, the two things that stick in my head was there's one guy in plain clothes directing traffic over the, I think the Williamsburg Bridge. He had a police badge around his neck, but he was in plain clothes, and he had like an M16 in his hand, a big gun. It looked like an M16 to me, which was kind of surreal. And Colin and I hit a checkpoint, police line. We needed to show ID. I had my building ID. Colin had his building ID. Kind of, even after all these years, I'm kind of upset with the fact they let me right through, and the cop at that first checkpoint had to pat him down, even after he showed his ID. But that was the sensitivity of the time, I suppose. Made no sense to me even then. So we're walking down. We finally get to the to Water Street, and there was another checkpoint, and the same exact thing happened. Another cop basically we showed our IDs. They let us in. I walked through. They patted him down. Still kind of pissed about that. But anyway, then we get to the corner of Water Street and Wall Street, and across the street, and the sanitation hadn't come around yet to clean up everything. So we're still walking through piles of soot and dust and debris from the towers. And I remember when we got to the corner of Water and Wall, there was sandbags about 4 foot high directly across the street from one end to the other, with one little entrance. And it was, I don't know if they were National Guard or whatever. So we showed our ID there. So that's the third checkpoint. And so we started walking west on Wall Street to get up to 14 Wall. And at the corner of Broad and Wall, for those who aren't from New York, south of Wall Street is called Broad Street. The road parallel, the crossroad. South is Broad, and it turns into Nassau going north, which is right by Federal Hall, if anybody knows the area. At that corner, there were 2 police cars, because this is right where the stock exchange is. And they weren't, and with a police line on the side, or with a police barricade on the sidewalk, and they weren't letting us pass. I said, we work at 14 Wall right up here. We're just here to test the systems to see if they, we're ready to rock for Monday. And I remember the sergeant that was there said to the other fella, I'll walk him up to make sure it was okay. And I said, I can't believe how much security it is down here. I didn't realize this was the exact moment that President Bush was talking through his bullhorn there. I'm sure anybody seeing or listening to this have seen that when he's on the ground zero talking through his bullhorn. That was the exact moment we were walking up Wall Street. So that's why, that was the main reason for all this security. So anyway, the sergeant, and I'm telling the sergeant, I can't believe how much, like 3 checkpoints to get down to where we are. And you guys, he goes, this ain't nothing, look behind you. And he points to the roof of the building back down the block on the corner of Water and Wall Street. And he goes, look at the roof. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. There was an anti-aircraft gun on the roof of this building on the corner of Water and Wall. You guys, whoever's listening or seeing that, probably never knew that, but I'm here to tell you it's the truth. So anyway, the sergeant walks us into the building. The building was completely deserted. We got up to the 17th floor where we worked, and I guess when I opened up the office door, the sergeant was satisfied that I belonged there. So, but he had an ulterior motive too, because the first thing he asked was if we had a bathroom in there. So, yeah, so he went to the bathroom. But anyway, so then, that was it. We fired up the systems. The phones didn't work. We didn't. There's a thing on Wall Street called settlement. We have to settle every day, every trading day, and we never settled on 9/11. Apparently, there was a less than 10 brokerage houses that never settled. H.G. Wellington was one of them. But anyway, the phones didn't work, and the computers, as I recall, the computers did work. And then actually, when Colin and I were in the office, we heard a phone ring, and sure enough, the phones that were in the offices on the 18th floor, one floor above us, whereas it was a different company. I forget what our company was, but whatever company we had, the relay stations or whatever were in the lobby in the basement of the trade center. This company, which I think was AT&T, was not. So their phones worked. So we went up there. There was nobody up there, and we conducted business, if you want to call it settling. I manually settled things on the phone in somebody else's office that day. So that's my 9/11 story. I hope it wasn't too boring for you, but I figured with our 20th anniversary coming up, I figured I'd share my 9/11 story to you. And I'd like to do that in memory of all those we lost that day, including Lieutenant Raymond Murphy, Fire Department. He was a friend of our family. His family and ours were in the same neighborhood growing up in the Bronx. And he passed away that day, unfortunately. And Tom Farrelly, who was my sophomore year algebra teacher, he left teaching, and I believe he was working in Cantor Fitzgerald, and he passed away that day too. So to those and everyone else we lost that day, this podcast is a tribute to those. And thanks for taking the time to listen to me.